Watching that brilliant film Houdini the other night on late night TV reminded me of working with one of my all-time favourite stars, the very brilliant Tony Curtis. Now, I met Tony really through a strange connection, because at the time I was working for a radio station which was owned by Mohammed Al-Fayed, the infamous owner of Harrods department store in London. And he was big friends with so many celebrities. You know, I mean, we all know the big stars that they used to open the Harrods sale. People like Cher, Michael Jackson and Tony Curtis. And Tony came into the studios one day and Mr. Al-Fayed introduced me and we became really good friends. I went along to interview him on many occasions and we would, you know, talk on the phone and all that sort of stuff. This is a little bit pre-internet, you know, and well, maybe not too much pre-internet, but, you know, a little bit pre-internet. And so basically I went down to interview him one day and we got chatting about all of his movies, and he particularly enjoyed Houdini, but he did tell me that it wasn't the smooth sail that everybody thought it was, because Tony at the time was signed to Universal Studios, which was seen really as a lesser studio. You know, there were big studios if you think about it, you know, MGM, Paramount, and then there were the sort of lower rate ones like Universal, Republic, Monogram, you know, those sort of things. Now, what was interesting was that Tony decided to do Houdini because basically he was a fan, and he thought this would get to really show off just how fit he was, you know, because he was very much into fitness and health and all that sort of stuff. Plus the fact he was going to make this movie at Paramount, and Paramount of course were this big studio against Universal, but better than that, they decided that they were going to hire in his gorgeous wife Janet Leigh. Now, they'd been married a while obviously, and you know, Tony was a little bit concerned, he told me, about appearing on screen with Janet because she was a very good actress, but Paramount insisted that they had to be together because she was signed to MGM, and she knew, and they knew, that by having a Metro star on their roster, even for a short period, this would help the box office and more importantly the project themselves. Now, what's interesting, I think, is that then what happened was there was a bit of a sort of a hitch, because Hedda Hopper, the infamous columnist, suggested that rather than Tony Curtis, who wasn't that known at the time, why not use somebody more established like Orson Welles? This is before he got a little bit too chubby. And he did kind of like the idea, Orson Welles, but he was busy with other things, so he declined. Then they cast their eye towards an actor called Richard Egan, who was, you know, very debonair, very charismatic young actor just starting out at that time. And he did have a look of Houdini, but, you know, this is Hollywood, and they basically decided that they needed a good-looking couple. And at that point, there were no better-looking couple than Tony and Janet. So they got the roles. Tony told me, though, that he didn't mind doing any of the scenes, and he did learn to become a slight magician. He said he was fascinated by all of that sort of stuff. But himself and his wife, Janet, both agreed that they didn't like the way that the movie went from being a spectacular to sort of going into this thing about mediums and Houdini's obsession with finding out about the other life or the afterlife, stuff like that, you know. But the film was a huge box office hit, and Tony went on to make 4 more movies with Janet, so obviously there was a great combination there. When you're meeting somebody like, you know, Tony Curtis, those big Hollywood stars, you have to remember a couple of things, that they're still a star, and more importantly, you know, they still want to be remembered for their body of work. And of course he went on to do splendid work like Some Like It Hot, The Boston Strangler, things like that. And for my era, of course, we all remember him in the brilliant Persuaders. One thing I must tell you, though, funny story, this is a true story. One day I went to interview him in Harrods, and he had an art exhibition on. And, you know, we're all looking around. It's very much in the public area as well. And we're all looking around at these wonderful paintings. And at the end of the interview, he says to me, "Hey, Neil, help yourself to one of the paintings." And I thought, wow, you know, how generous, you know. So I took this painting, which didn't really mean that much to me, you know, but I thought, oh, well, you know, might as well. And I'm walking out of Harrods, and the alarms all went off. And that's because they were, of course, they did have a price tag on. And I didn't think I have to pay. But let me tell you, the picture that Tony told me that I could help myself to was 25 grand. So consequently, you know, I took it back quite quickly. And the doorman actually did laugh and say to me, "Oh, you know, he's been doing this all day. I think he's trying to get lucky." I thought, you know, We're working in newspapers. Who's got 25 grand for a picture? But we did still remain great friends, and it was very sad, of course, when he passed away. But what a body of work he left behind. And if you get a chance and you haven't seen it yet, do go and have a look at the movie starring Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis in Houdini. It is truly spectacular, and I think this really did pave the way for Tony to go on to other things. We talked about many stars during our friendship, from the big names like Marilyn Monroe, Billy Wilder, Joan Crawford, to, of course, the things that he really wanted to do in the latter part of his career. What a guy, what a star.